June 15, 1519, the quiet priory in Essex. In a private room far from the glitter of court, Bessie Blount goes into labour. She is young, educated, and the kind of woman men notice in a room before she even speaks. Talented at music, trained to move gracefully, chosen to serve Queen Catherine of Aragon, and yet, tonight, Catherine is not the one everyone is praying for, because the father of Bessie's child is Henry VIII, King of England. And what happens in the dark hours of that night does not stay in the shadows. Bessie gives birth to a healthy boy, alive, strong, breathing. For Catherine, it is a quiet catastrophe. She has endured pregnancy after pregnancy that ended in loss, miscarriages, stillbirths. Infants who lived only days. Only one child survives a daughter, Princess Mary, in Tudor England. A daughter is not security. A daughter is a question mark. Bessie's boy answers the question everyone is afraid to speak aloud. Henry can father sons, just not with his queen. And Henry does something almost unthinkable. He acknowledges the child publicly. He gives him a name that lands like a warning: Henry Fitzroy, son of the king. In that moment, a mistress becomes a constitutional threat, because once the king admits he has a living son, the entire succession stops feeling settled. It starts feeling negotiable and dangerous. For a brief, breathless moment, Henry behaves as if he is proud, not ashamed, not discreet, but oh, the boy is not hidden away like an awkward secret. He is given a household, he is given attention, and the court reads the message perfectly: the king's body works. The queen's does not. If you are a woman at court, you understand what that means. Catherine is not being judged on piety or kindness. She is being judged on biology. Every stillbirth becomes a political event. Every month without a pregnancy is another small humiliation performed in public. Bessie, meanwhile, has done the one thing a queen is expected to do, and that makes her both valuable and terrifying. 6 years pass. The child grows, and in 1525, Henry makes a move that sends a chill through every royal household in Europe. He summons his illegitimate son before the nobility and elevates him in a way that is almost unprecedented. Henry Fitzroy is created Duke of Richmond and Duke of Somerset. These are not decorative honours. These are titles that echo the language of heirs, the kind of titles that make men glance at one another and do quick, silent calculations about the future. Then Henry goes further. He gives Fitzroy ceremonial authority over the navy, symbolic power in Ireland, a household with its own officers, its own arms, its own council. This is not a child being indulged. This is a child being shaped. And if you are Princess Mary, the king's legitimate daughter, you are watching your place in the world shift, quietly, without anyone daring to say it out loud. From the outside, it looks like pageantry, a father doting on a bright boy. But behind the velvet and ceremony is a legal problem that could split the kingdom. In 16th century England, bastard is not only an insult, it is a barrier. An illegitimate child has no automatic right to inherit the crown. Law, tradition, and the church all lean against him. So a question begins to hover over Parliament and council chambers. Could Henry VIII change the rules? Whispers grow into something more concrete. A proposal is discussed, a bill that could allow the king to name an heir of his choosing, legitimate or not. It never becomes law. But the fact it is even considered tells you how serious the situation has become, because the nightmare is not just legal. It is what comes after Henry dies. If Fitzroy is named heir, would England accept him? Mary would have supporters, Catholic nobles who believe blood and marriage still matter. Scotland has its own claims through Tudor marriages. Europe watches like predators, sensing weakness. France, spying the emperor, the pope, a bastard king could be treated as illegitimate, ripe for manipulation, or a pretext for invasion. And then there is the question no one wants to ask too loudly, what about the mother? If Fitzroy rose, Bessie Blount would rise with him. Not a queen, technically, but the king's mother is never powerless. She becomes a doorway, a whisper, a symbol factions can rally around. That possibility keeps men awake, not because Bessie is cruel, but because she is unpredictable, and because her existence proves how thin the line is between private desire and national crisis. Henry understands that danger, and he deals with it the way kings do, not with sentiment, but with control. In 1522, Bessie is married off to Gilbert Taleboys, a respectable landowner. On paper, it looks like a reward, a good match. Estates, safety. In reality, it is removal. Once she becomes Lady Taleboys, she is no longer the king's mistress. She is pushed out of court, away from London, away from the daily currents of power, and, crucially, away from her son. Fitzroy is raised close to Henry. Surrounded by advisors, handpicked by the king, Bessie is kept at a distance, as if the court is afraid that a mother might do what mothers do, shape her child's ambitions, guard his pride, whisper him into greatness. The message is cruelly clear. Henry wants the son. He does not want the woman, and Bessie has little choice but to accept. In Tudor England, a woman's security is conditional. Even if she has borne the king's child, even if her body has produced the very proof the king craved, she can be given land and still be powerless. So Bessie Fardis, her name appears less and less in records. She becomes, in effect, a ghost while still alive. The safest dangerous woman is the one no one remembers. But her legacy does not vanish, because her son keeps walking the halls of power. Every time Fitzroy is given the title, every time he is paraded before nobles, Bessie's forgotten pregnancy keeps echoing, and the echo reaches Henry's marriage like a slow poison, because Fitzroy does more than threaten the succession. He humiliates Catherine of Aragon in a way no sermon or courtly insult ever could. Every time Henry looks at his bastard son, he sees proof that he can father healthy boys, proof that the problem must be his queen. And in Henry's mind, proof becomes destiny. This is where the psychology twists. Henry becomes obsessed with the idea that his marriage is cursed. Catherine had been married to his older brother Arthur. The Bible contains a warning about marrying a brother's widow. Henry starts bending that line of scripture until it becomes a personal verdict. God is punishing him. But Fitzroy complicates the story. If God is punishing Henry for sin, why does a child born outside marriage survive and thrive? Why does sin produce a living son, while lawful marriage produces graves? Henry solves the contradiction by blaming Catherine herself. Not the marriage, but the woman. The 1527. His obsession has hardened into policy. He wants an annulment. He wants to erase the marriage as if it never existed. The great matter begins consuming England, diplomats scrambling, theologians arguing, the Pope stalling, Henry growing more furious with every delay. And at the centre of it all is a truth everyone understands, but few dare to state plainly. Bessie Blount's son made Henry feel entitled to a legitimate heir. If Bessie had never given birth, Henry might have accepted Mary as his successor. He might have stayed tied to Rome. England's religious future might have looked entirely different. But Fitzroy lived, and Henry kept staring at him, thinking, I deserve this. and I will burn down anything in my way to get it again. Other women learned from Bessie's story, even if they pretended not to. Mary Boleyn may have been Henry's mistress later, and rumours swirl that she bore children during the affair. But Henry never acknowledged them. No Fitzroy surname, no titles, no public message. By then, one bastard son was already enough of a complication. Anne Boleyn watched closely. She saw what happened to Bessie, rewarded, then removed. She saw what happened to Mary, used, then discarded. And when Henry turned his attention to Anne, she refused to be a footnote, not no to the king, but no to being only a mistress. Anne understood the terrifying leverage Fitzroy represented. You already have a living son. She could imply, imagine what you could have inside a lawful marriage, a son who cannot be questioned. So she held out years of waiting while Henry dismantled his marriage to Catherine. Years of pressure and danger, because refusing a king is not romance, it is risk. Anne becomes queen in 1533. She gives Henry a daughter, Elizabeth, not the son he wants. Suddenly she is trapped in the same nightmare Catherine lived with, and Fitzroy is still there in the background, titled and visible, the only living son Henry has ever publicly claimed. Anne must have looked at him and felt cold, dread, because the mistress had already done what queens were failing to do. And the lesson lingers. Even Jane Seymour's later triumph, the birth of Edward in 1537, is shadowed by the fact that Bessie did it first. Jane was the first wife to deliver a living boy. Bessie was the first woman, full stop. Then the alternative future dies. In 1536, Henry Fitzroy falls seriously ill. The details are blurred by time, but the shape is familiar fever. Weakness, a cough that deepens and refuses to let go. In an age without modern medicine, illness is not impressed by titles. Fitzroy is only 17 when he dies, and something strange happens for a young man who carried the aura of a possible heir. The public response is muted. No triumphal funeral in the heart of London. No loud national mourning. Almost as if the court wants to close the door quietly and move on. But Henry would have felt the loss like a collapse of scaffolding. Fitzroy was not merely a son. He was a backup plan, a reassurance, a proof that the Tudor line could continue through a male body. With Fitzroy gone, Henry is left with two daughters he has already pushed aside, Mary and Elizabeth, and no surviving legitimate son. The idea of a bastard king dies with him. The entire what-if timeline vanishes in one quiet death. A world where Bessie's child takes the crown. A world where England is ruled not by Mary or Elizabeth, but by Henry Fitzroy. A world where the Reformation, alliance, and wars might have unfolded differently. It is erased so quickly that it feels intentional. And that is the point. The Tudors bury dangerous possibilities as neatly as they bury bodies. Fitzroy's death forces Henry onto a narrower, more desperate path, clinging to the hope that a queen will give him what a mistress once did. The dynasty becomes more fragile, and Henry becomes more fearful. So where does that leave Bessie Blount, the woman who set all of this in motion? She outlives the scandal, and she outlives the moment when her name mattered at court. But she does not outlive the erasure. History keeps Fitzroy's titles and ceremonies. It lets Bessie fade into the margins, as if she were only a body that produced a boy and then stopped existing. Bessie did not need a crown to threaten a kingdom. She only needed to succeed once. At the exact moment, a queen could not. For 17 years, her son was the sharp edge under every polite conversation about succession. He pushed Henry's marriage toward collapse. He fed the king certainty that he deserved another son. He haunted Princess Mary, and he cast a shadow over Anne Boleyn. then over Jane Seymour's brief trial. Then, when he died, the court shut the door and acted as if the danger had never existed.